is this a thing? Because the flight attendants have jokes. The people at the gate were pretty nice. The planes, not all that great looking. This one, the planes were kind of ugly looking. And so the planes don't look all that great, but whatever. I just need the thing to ascend and I needed to land on the wheels. And that's exactly what happened. And so I'm thinking, this is really cool. I have been since then, for the past 2 plus decades, I have been a faithful Southwest customer. And it all started with running across people who were just nice. They made it a pleasant experience. And when I got into recruiting, I found out that there's this thing called employer branding where a company positions themselves as a great place to work. And they basically use the employee experience to doing it to do it. And that's what Southwest had been doing. They were kind of ahead of the curve on it. And so that's something that maybe you can think about. What can you do as you grow your business? How can you use the employee experience to make sure that you are branded in a pretty useful way? There are three things that I want to be able to do with you this afternoon. One thing I want to do is I want to help you understand what employer branding is and why it matters. Also, I want to help you understand how to craft a competitive employer brand. And then also, I want to help you determine how to leverage your employer brand for great marketing. So, about me, my name is Eddie Francis. I am a former college and university marketing and communications director. I worked at three institutions. I worked at Southern University in New Orleans, Paul Quinn College in Dallas, as well as Dillard University. I'm also a member of the American Marketing Association, where I helped to plan two symposia on the marketing of higher education. I'm also a former talent acquisition professional. I worked with an award winning global recruitment firm. I recruited for such brands as Quest Diagnostics, Staples. I also recruited for Lowe's Home Improvement and Sprouts Farmers Market. I also recruited from the entry level position to the executive position. And I host a podcast called I Want to Work There. It is a higher education, employer branding podcast. But you do not have to be in higher education to understand what's happening in the podcast. Everything we talk about can apply to just about any industry. It's one of Hannon Hill's best higher ed marketing podcasts for 2024. And I was nominated twice for the American Marketing Association Higher Education Marketer of the Year. So, where do we start this journey? Well, the best place to start the journey is with a great quote from Benny Johnson, who's the CEO of the American Marketing Association. I interviewed him on episode 12 of I Want to Work There, and he says something I will never forget, and hopefully you will never forget it. Your employees are your first best customers. I'll say that again. Your employees are your first best customers. And one thing I do encourage is that if you have any questions, I don't have any visibility on the chat right now. If you have any questions, make sure you throw those questions in there and we'll make sure we get those questions answered. I definitely want to be able to answer any questions that you have. But when I was in Dallas, my wife and I were there. There was this one Indian restaurant that we loved to go to. And the reason we loved going there is there was this one server that we loved. I think his name, if I remember correctly, was Steve. We'll call him Steve. And Steve was really smooth. Steve had a lot of hand play when it came to the menus and the way he would flip his napkins and the way he would put the silverware on the table and even the way he would pour the drinks and put the drinks down. But the best thing about Steve is that when we went back to that restaurant, Steve remembered us and he remembered our order. Only the second time at this place. And he goes, yeah, I remember you too. You ordered the Cabernet. You really liked the Vindaloo, the lamb Vindaloo. And I remember you guys. You were the one, you were really into the garlic naan. And I'm going, wait a
Yes.
minute, this is only the second time. But he remembered us. So guess what? That became our spot because Steve knew what we liked. We started to have even more conversation with Steve when he would come to the table, just quick 30-second conversations. And then one day we went back and Steve was no longer there. Well, we thought that maybe he just was taking some time off and the server was good, but the server wasn't Steve. We went back again. No Steve. And we started thinking about the fact that every time we went and Steve was there, Steve knew our order, and then he would make suggestions to us, and then here was the best thing. Steve told us at one point, I've tried just about everything on this menu. I love this menu. And bam, we were sold, right? But when he wasn't there any longer, it just wasn't the same experience. And we never went back again, unfortunately. The food was great, but Steve wasn't there. Steve was that business's first best customer. He took the journey with us when it came down to looking at the menu and deciding what it was that we might want to eat. And he got us to try new things. And that is a great part of employer branding. And I started thinking, what if almost every single server in that place had been like Steve? We probably wouldn't have missed him. We would have gone back and it would have been Steve, it would have been another one, it would have been another one, it would have been another one, it would have been consistent, and we would have been faithful customers. Well, let me tell you what employer branding is. Definition: an employer brand is an organization's distinctive features which identify them as an employer of choice to potential, and get this, current employees. You can't forget about your current employees. We'll get to that in a second. An employer value proposition is something that you get as a result of forming your employer brand. It's an organization's employer brand summary of how working for them benefits potential and current employees. Again, current employees, you can't forget about them. So, what are people looking for? I mean, you have people who, if you have a business and you are actively hiring right now, or if you have hired people for your business, you have probably gone through the frustration of having to find these people, and then you have gone through maybe a bit of a frustration in the interview process because this is a long process getting talent in place for your organization. And then you have to figure out, if you are a first time business owner, or if you've never managed anyone before, now you got to figure out, how do you manage people? And a lot of that stuff is what helps you create your employer brand. Well, here's what you need to know. When people are looking for jobs, they are looking for something. Yes, everybody wants to get paid and everybody wants to get paid well. That is non negotiable. But people are looking for other things. So 95% of job seekers say that an employer's reputation impacts a decision whether or not to apply for a job. 95%. This is according to a survey by FlexJobs. 79% examine a company's mission and purpose before applying. Mission and purpose, that's going to come up in a little bit. 75% of candidates are more likely to apply at a company that actively manages its brand. Think about that. 75% are likely to apply for a company that actively manages its brand. That means that they are looking at companies that are actively monitoring their reputation. They are doing something about their reputation. They are saying something about their value proposition at all times. They have that information that's accessible as well. So, why does this even matter to you? I mean, after all, if somebody wants a job, they just need to come do the job, right? Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, they do need to just come do the job. But what if they got more out of the experience than just doing the job? What if they actually enjoyed doing the job? Here's why employer branding matters. Number one, let's think of it in terms of talent attraction. A great employer brand will draw the attention of potential quality hires who are great for your business. If you can say a specific thing about your business, then you stand a much better chance of getting the type of employee with whom that message is going to resonate. And they're going to believe in what it is that you do. And if they believe in what it is that you're doing, then there's a good chance that you're going to be able to do the next thing, and that is retain that talent. When it comes to retaining your talent, talent retention boosts your reputation as an employer. It also enhances employee engagement. If you can enhance employee engagement, that is good for morale. If you have great morale, that is great for productivity. And who does not want great productivity? Here are some other reasons why employer branding matters. Stiff competition for quality talent in the marketplace. I had a conversation not too long with a friend of mine who is over a program at a university. A couple of years ago, they hired people for this program, and they were having trouble finding folks. I don't know if you know this or not, but in higher education and a lot of other sectors, and if you are a business owner who's been hiring people over the past 2+ years, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. But what's been happening is that since the COVID lockdown, people have been making some pretty informed choices about whether or not they want to work for somebody else. Lots of people have started their own businesses. You might be one of them. And as it turns out, what has happened is that, excuse me, a lot of applications for jobs across the board have gone down over the past couple of years. Now, those applications are picking up again. But when I was talking to this friend who said, yeah, a couple of years ago, I was hired for this position and I barely had an application. I might have gotten 15 applications. And this was for an assistant director level position. And then they said, "Oh, I'm so relieved. All right, I'm seeing more applications." And I said, "Okay, but let me ask you a question. Do you like the quality of the applications you're getting?" And he said, "Huh, let me take a look." And he came back to me and they said, "Yeah, I like about 50% of them." And I said, "Okay, that's not bad. You're doing okay. You're doing okay. But you definitely want to see quality in that applicant pool, not just a bunch of warm bodies." And then the other reason employer branding matters is it enhances leadership and management practices. Let's park it on this for a quick second. It is one thing to lead people, it's another thing to manage people. A lot of people want to be led, they want to be guided, they want to be taught something. But when folks when folks have a job that they're not crazy about, and I want you to think about this. I've been in a situation where I've had toxic managers and toxic bosses. I didn't quit the job, I quit the people. I quit bad leadership. That's what I quit. But on the flip side, there was one job that I really, really wanted to go work for this president. And so I applied to that institution, but I also applied to work under that person because I just thought he was the bomb. And I was right. I had a great time working for him. My boss was great. And so when it comes to making sure that you develop a great employer brand, a big part of that is making sure that you have um, an apparatus within your company where the leadership and management that is sound. But then here's the next one: new generation, new expectations. That's another reason for developing a great employer brand. So if you're Generation X like me, or if you're a baby boomer, and even if you're a millennial, there's a good chance that when you started your last job, your last 9 to 5, whatever that was, you just put your head down and you went to work. That was it. It's like, listen, I got a job, I'm gonna get the paycheck. I just need to go ahead and go to work. Millennials are a little different. They might not just want to go to work. Millennials do have questions for folks, and that is just fine. But guess what? Gen Z is a lot more demanding. Gen Z is not going to walk in and just put their heads down and go to work. A lot of Gen Z, they want to know who they're working for. They want to understand who the personalities are. They want to know if they can trust people. They want to know if it's worth their time. They are going to opt out very quickly if they don't like what they see. If they think you're fake, they are not going to roll with you. They are going to peace out as soon as they got in. And so Gen Z is very much in the mindset of having a sense of purpose in their jobs. I actually just interviewed someone for I Want to Work There about this very thing. So these are some of the reasons you really want to think about developing an employer brand. So let's talk about the next thing. Let's talk about crafting this brand. What does that look like? I always start this conversation with a great quote by a colleague of mine by the name of Kate Ledger. She said, "Great brands are rooted in truth." I could not agree with that more. Great brands are authentic, they are real, they have integrity. Yes, you can have the greatest logo in the world. You can have the greatest, the greatest tagline in the world. Your social media can be popping and all that good stuff. But if behind closed doors, people cannot trust you and they cannot trust what the work experience is like, or if they don't like the work experience, all of that stuff, it doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, they are going to be even louder on Glassdoor, on Indeed. They're going to get on Facebook and they're going to write their little Facebook dissertation about how everything looks all sparkly and shiny from the outside, but once you get inside, it is pure dirt. They are going to do that to you if you are not real about your brand. So when you put this employer brand together, the first thing you want to think about is you want to leverage your business's mission, vision, and core values, as well as the value proposition. Let me tell you what the real meat is here. The real meat in this part is in the mission, but then also, most definitely, the real meat of this is in the core. It's also in the core values. I have a dog who's trying to get in the door right now because she doesn't like rain. So if you hear the door banging, that's the dog. so um, she gets nervous when it rains. But anyway, when it comes down to the core values, the reason I harp on that a little bit because your core values of your company that guides the way that you behave, it guides the way you make decisions a lot of times. So that's a lot of internal work that's very important, and that also guides the way you lead and the way you manage people. And then the other thing that you want to do in crafting this employer brand is you want to learn what your employees find valuable about working with your business. Also, address the areas of improvement. So don't take the good stuff they say and go with it and ignore the criticism. You got to take that criticism too. You got to be real about this. And then you create your EVP, your employee value proposition. Next step, you communicate your EVP during your recruitment, hiring, and onboarding processes. When you communicate this, there are several ways you can do it. You can communicate it with your website, which, by the way, please tell me that you are keeping your websites updated. This is such an important part of marketing. But also, you can go ahead and communicate through your website. You can obviously communicate through social media. But one area that a lot of people never think to communicate their employer brand, job postings, and even your job descriptions. There are things that you can write into your job postings and job descriptions that will tell people exactly what kind of company you are and tell them what it is that you value so they can make a decision for themselves about whether or not you're a fit. And the kinds of people that you want to apply for jobs with you want people who are going to be a part of your culture. They're not just going to fit your culture, but they're going to help you cultivate the culture of your company. And then the other thing you can do to craft the employer brand, remember I said that current employees count too? Current employees count a lot because just like the experience that we had with Steve, who was a current employee at the time, he was a customer, not just an employee of that restaurant. He loved everything on the menu, but he also seemed to enjoy working there, right? So what you want to do as a part of your employer brand and crafting it is periodically collect employee satisfaction data. Let me give you a quick tip here. When it comes to collecting that data, if you know that there's something funky going on with your group, let me give you a tip. Collect that data anonymously. Okay, because people never want to be known for being the ones who are going to deliver the bad news. And they don't want to be targeted if they have something negative to say about the experience. But you, as a leader, as a business owner, you got to take that. You have to take that feedback and you have to be honest about that feedback. So, what we're going to do is we are going to have some questions in just a little bit. I can't wait to get to those questions. But one thing I want to tell you is that I do want to get some feedback from you about the presentation and what you thought of the presentation. So, I'm going to share some information with you in just a little bit. As a matter of fact, I'm going to share that information with you right now. I'm going to close out this presentation in a little bit. But what I would like for you to do is I would like for you to give me some feedback on what you thought of the information here. This wasn't as interactive as I would like for it to have been because I can't necessarily see what's going on the interactive side. But what you can do right now is give me some feedback on what you thought of the information and all that good stuff. And all you have to do is, if you have a phone with you, you want to hold your phone up to the screen and you want to scan the QR code, you can do that. Also, you can go to talk.ac slash Eddie Francis, talk.ac slash Eddie Francis. I'm going to say it again, talk.ac slash Eddie Francis, and use the code BRAND, all caps, and then you can give me some feedback. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shut my mouth for a couple of seconds here so you can get to that, but then I'm going to go ahead and wrap up so we can get to the Q&A as well. I really, really do appreciate you. I have a lot more to say, by the way. All right, let's see if we have what we have in the chat or if I can see the chat right now. All right. Oh, great. I do have a question that I would love to get to in just a second. And it's a great question. It is definitely a great question. In the meantime, let's see if I can. I'm going to see if I can get this in the chat. All right. Talk.ac, Eddie Francis. And remember, there we go. And remember, use the code brand. So as you are doing that, I am going to go ahead and wrap this up, and I'm going to get into this question, which is a great question. But let me just go ahead and say this. Um, it does not take a master chef to know that the dish tastes bad. Here's why I say this. I say this because, and this is an overall note about branding, and I alluded to this a little earlier. When it comes to branding, you can't fake it. Maybe you can, but you're only going to be able to fake it for so long. The brand has to be real. The brand has to be authentic. The way you, the way you understand the value of what it is that you are providing to folks, your product or your service, the way you understand that is the way that it is going to be communicated to folks a lot of times. But if you are the type of person who tries to brand from the outside in other words, your first order of business is the logo. The first order of business is to put some really cool, snappy looking stuff on social media. If your first order of business is a tagline and that sort of thing, then that's not going to mean much to people. People can see through that stuff all the time. So, an employer brand, you can only imagine if you put on your website a group of happy looking people. And by the way, one of my pet peeves is this: I do not endorse at all putting stock photos on a website of a bunch of generic happy looking people. No, 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 no. Please stay away from that. What customers want to see is they want to see real people. They want to see who actually represents that brand. And when they see who actually represents that brand, and when they see or if they feel that what they're seeing is authentic, then you stand a much better chance of getting the kind of customer support that you want to get. You stand a much better chance of growing that business. You stand a much better chance of having customers who are not going to just be one time customers. There's a good chance they're going to be repeat customers. Again, let's go back to the story about me and my wife going to the Indian restaurant. As long as Steve was there, we were back and back and back and back. But once we lost somebody who really represented that brand in such a great way, then we exercised the option to not do it anymore, to not go anymore. And so for you, as a business owner who is growing your business, it is remarkably important that you make sure that the dish that you are cooking, in terms of the types of people you are hiring, the types of people you are retaining, and then also the experience you are providing to the people who work for you, it is really, really important that you decide to put a lot of love into how you cook that dish and you really put some effort into it and you listen to people. I think one of the greatest leadership quotes I've ever heard is don't be so worried about hitting the ground running. Hit the ground listening, especially to your employees. And I'm telling you right now, if you have employees who really get a lot out of the work experience, then they're going to carry that message to your customers, and the customers are going to catch on. Right? So I want to thank you very much for the opportunity this afternoon. Yes, we got a couple of questions. I'm going to read these questions and see what I got for you here. And so the first question is, how would you recommend getting employee feedback to build the brand? That's a great question. So there are a couple of ways to do it. One way to do it, if you have about, let's say up to 20 employees who are working for you, one thing I suggest doing a focus group discussion. The reason I suggest that is number one, I think it's important for employees to see that the business owner is engaging with them. Even if there's kind of an uncomfortable vibe among you, you at least want to break that wall down so you can connect with them in some way. So a focus group is a really good way to do it. You don't necessarily need all 20 employees to be there. If you can get 50% of that group to show up for a focus group discussion, you're doing good. But if you do have some barriers that really need to be broken down, and it looks like the employees may not necessarily be all that communicative, I do suggest kicking out an anonymous survey to them and promise them that the feedback is not going to be held against anybody. I don't recommend having people do handwritten surveys because, again, you're talking about employees who are going to, if you have a funky vibe, you're talking about employees who are going to say, well, this person's going to recognize my handwriting. They've seen my handwriting. And so they're going to know who answered this question this way. So I do recommend using an electronic platform where people can be truly anonymous. And again, I can't state this enough, do not hold the negative feedback against your employees. Don't try to win that battle. What you want to try to do is understand why the battle is happening, and surveys can do that. So collecting employee feedback, two ways to do it. I'd highly recommend, again, doing a focus group discussion, so that not only you can get some quantitative feedback, you can get some qualitative feedback, you can see the emotions, but then also, if you need to do an anonymous written survey, do that as well. We have another question. The question is, what videos do you recommend a small business publish? Um, if you can elaborate on that just a little bit as far as what videos, that would be great. But I'm going to start trying to answer that question. So, a small business, I really recommend, if you have, say, up to 10 employees, if your employees are down for it and they want to be in the videos, they want to be a part of it, I do recommend videos that indicate that they are able to articulate what the value of the experience is working for your business. And then also them saying, listen, we want to grow and we want you to grow with us. I think that kind of video could be very helpful. I think also, using that kind of video on social media can be very helpful, especially if you decide to use it in a spot like LinkedIn, or if you or whatever platform your customer base gravitates to. That's a good place as well. Okay, so here we go. When startup phase, where should photos? Uh, where can you find photos since you recommend not using stock photos? Yeah. So I'll tell you one of the things that I do. I'm a solopreneur, so for me right now, it's really about my telling my story about why is it that I am doing what I'm doing. So a lot of photos, because I'm a solopreneur, a lot of the photos are of me. But the thing is that I make it known that, this is something I'm building, this is my business. Now, once I get into a phase where I want to hire someone, I think, I think using the kinds of photos, maybe what I would do, what I'm thinking ahead, what I would do is a photo of me with a customer or with a client, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the customer or the client's head, but the back of the head if the customer or client doesn't want to be in the photo. But then also, action photos, because a lot of times when people see action photos of leadership, they'll say to themselves, okay, it looks like this person's really doing something. This person is speaking at this event, or this person is, there's an action photo of this type of this person who is making a delivery. Or what you can do is you can use user generated content on social media as well, where you are simply talking to the camera, telling your story, talking about what it's like to do the work that you're doing. Let's say that you set up a delivery service. You bring the phone with you on your deliveries and say, okay, this is what it's like when I do these deliveries. I love delivering to this customer. I love delivering in this area. So that could be the type of the type of content that you can use. But one thing I can tell you is that a lot of times when customers and clients when they take a look at a stock photo or a stock video, and people are trying to when they're trying to use that to say, okay, this is what our clients or this is what our business looks like, and they don't see the same thing, they're going, wait a minute, what happened to the office that what happened to the office space that was in the photo? This isn't the same thing. So that's why I really, really have an issue with stock photos and stock videos a lot of times because you really, really want to make sure you represent yourself in a way that's real and it's authentic. And listen, one thing about brand work, you're not going to get it right all the time the first time. So it does take some trial and error. And it does take putting some brand work out there, some brand expression out there, and then coming back to the table and saying, okay, well, that didn't work. This didn't work. You definitely want to be able to figure out what kind of feedback you get from that. And listen, I honestly, one of the things that I did early on when I was building my website was I sent my website to friends of mine, like, 20, 30 friends, expecting maybe about 10 of them to respond. And, I sent it out. I asked them, what do you think? What do you think of? And they gave me some great feedback that really helped me develop my website over time. So I don't know if we have any other questions. Do we have any other questions? Eager to answer the questions. In the meantime, okay, all right, no other questions. In the meantime, you can find me very easily. My website is eddiefrancis.com, eddiefrancis.com. If you want to contact me directly, if you want to email me, eddie@eddiefrancis.com, eddie@eddiefrancis.com. And if you're one of those people who does this crazy thing and it's called a phone call, then yes, you can use your telephonic device as well. And you can call me at 504-383-3995. That's 504-383-3995. All of that information is available on my website at eddiefrancis.com. So thank you very much for hanging out with me this afternoon. I hope that something I said is helpful. And if you have any questions for me, I'm more than happy to answer. One of the things you should know is that if you would like to take advantage of it, I am offering free 30-minute consultations. So you can spend 30 minutes with me and say, hey, listen, this is what's going on. What do you think? And I'm happy to just give you my thoughts for 30 minutes, a free 30-minute consultation to talk about employer branding strategies that you're thinking about, or an employer branding strategy that you would like to implement, or just to ask me more about employer branding. That's a free 30-minute consultation. That is especially my thank you to you, especially if you decide to give me some feedback. And if you just want to contact me directly, go to my website, eddiefrancis.com. So thank you very much again. And I hope that I was able to give you some really good things to think about so that you can start building that business organically.